This is Toledo Symphony Lab, a behind-the-scenes look at the world of classical music from WGTE Public Media and your Toledo Symphony. I'm Brad Cresswell, and we have a one-on-one conversation today with the Toledo Symphony's music director, Alain Trudel. We're going to talk about something very close to his heart. First of all, let me welcome you, Alain.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks. So you're up at home in Montreal right now, in Quebec, yeah?
Yeah, and I'm coming back at the end of the week. I'm coming back soon.
Yeah, you're coming back. Well, one of the reasons that you're coming back is to conduct a concert that's happening a week from tomorrow. It's Thursday, March 23rd, from the ongoing Toledo Jazz Orchestra series. It's 8 o'clock p.m. at the Valentine Theater, entitled Take the A Train. And you can find more information about this by going online to the website at toledosymphony.com. And also call up their box office if you choose. That is at 419-246-8000. So, Alain, I've got you on the phone. We've talked before about the Toledo Jazz Orchestra, but you've done a few concerts with them now, right?
Well, we're starting to know each other a little bit better each time. So, this will be our third one. They've had also a Christmas concert, which wasn't with me, which we had a program on as well. And they're a wonderful, wonderful group, and we're doing some interesting programming with them.
Yeah.
And interesting arrangements. And this one is not really about the arrangement. This one is more transcription of being in the tradition. So it's a different program.
Yeah, the jazz tradition, we should say. I have here that it's a tribute to Duke Ellington and Billy Strayhorn. Is that sort of the premise of the concert? You're going to hear a lot of cuts by those folks?
Absolutely. It will be, of course, mainly the jazz orchestra, a few little combo pieces to feature some of our wonderful soloists in the jazz orchestra, but they're also featured, as people know, if they know jazz ensemble and big band tunes, they're featured within the pieces. But what's really interesting is we are taking most, I would say 90% of what we're going to play comes from the library of the Jazz at Lincoln Center Orchestra, the group that is led by Wynton Marsalis.
Yeah.
And they have a wonderful library of music, which actually is transcribed from original recordings from Duke Ellington. So they're trying to go as close as possible to the original way that Duke Ellington and his band used to interpret that music.
Yeah, well, we should mention, like a lot of musicians do today, they created a lot of the songs in the studio, right? And that's why you have to transcribe from what they did in the studio on the album to make it work for live performance today. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, because, a lot of it, it's very different from now. Now, everything has to be formatted before. Studio time is very, very rare. Usually you record live, and everything is so expensive. You have to make sure all is rehearsed you don't have one hair that is out of place, which is not great for me, actually, as you know. But
I'm going to pull up my sound effect just for that joke. Okay.
And so it's really interesting to have people that took the time to, because it was more of a laboratory back then, to come back to what you were saying.
Yeah.
And they had time to rework some arrangement. And what's really interesting about Duke Ellington's orchestra is that it's a little bit of a metaphor for America. It's a group of individuals that come together to create something very strong as they come together, but their individuality is also very important, and the individuality makes the group stronger. So it's very different from other kinds of big band where what's really the most important thing is to be homogeneous, right?
Yeah.
So this one, he really wrote for each of the players.
Speaking of the players, you've had a few concerts, as you mentioned, with them so far. Is the honeymoon period still going on, or is it over?
I think we're just walking from the altar to the buffet right now.
Yeah. Alain Trudel, if you didn't know, is the newly appointed, I guess we can still say newly appointed since it's only this season, artistic director of the Toledo Jazz Orchestra. And I've heard from a lot of folks who have attended these concerts that they're a great affair and they're well attended. So I would urge folks to definitely check out the concert that's happening again a week from tomorrow. Is Thursday, March 23rd, 8 o'clock p.m. at the Valentine Theater. Toledo Jazz Orchestra with Alain Trudel. You are, of course, a world-class trombone player. Are you pulling out your instrument for this concert?
Yes, I will. I've done it at every concert now that we've been playing together. It's a great motivation for me also because we have some really great soloists in the group, and I just, it's nice. For me, it's a great motivation when I play with great players because I want to represent, as they say.
Yeah.
And it forces me to practice a little bit more. Sometimes there's no time, but 10:30 at night, I put the mute in. I do an extra half hour, and when I think I'm gonna go to bed or not, or after a concert, so it keeps me disciplined a little bit more. So I'm really excited about it.
Does it make you at all nervous to get up there and be the star soloist on your trombone with that whole band of, as you describe them, remarkable musicians, peering over your shoulder, as it were? Does that affect you at all?
Yes and no. I mean, that's not how I see it. I really see it as you get to a point in your life where your hardest critique will always be yourself. I'm not more nervous when I play a concert than at home because I'm harsh on myself a little bit. When there's something that's not working, I'm like, mwah. So I try not to show up on stage with too many question marks. I like to have exclamation points. That's a little bit more. But no, that's not part of it. And also, when you have such good players, I have to say, sometimes they carry you a little bit. Not to say that I can't hold my own, but I mean it's interesting because you don't feel you have the responsibility of carrying them. So it's really nice. And I think especially for this program that's coming up next week, it's really enjoyable because we're going to go back to the essence of swing, the essence of creativity. It's not a modern program. Like, we don't have charts from, let's say, Buddy Rich, or which we will someday, or Maynard Ferguson, or more modern bands. But those tunes that, if you take the A-Train, of course, because it's the title, but, Lush Life, Cottontail, Moon Indigo, Coco, we go back to the interpretation that Duke Ellington really was doing, had in mind. It's very close, actually, to putting together a classical music program because we're actually trying to be in the spirit of the composer at that time.
Speaking of the composer, I know that I told you there wouldn't be a quiz, but I put together a little something anyway, which should be pretty easy for you.
There were not going to be any math on this test.
There's no math. Definitely no math. There's no math on any of my tests because I'm so bad at math. But this is called Who Wrote It? So I'm going to go through and we'll just do a flash round here. You tell me who wrote the song that I'm going to name, and you have four possibilities. It's either Billy Strayhorn, Duke Ellington, both, or neither.
Oh, boy. Okay.
Okay, so I will say the title, and you say the answer. And I do have some music for you. This is a track called Take the B Train. All right, I'll say the title, and you give the answer.
Oh, boy. Okay, let's go.
First one is Lush Life.
Lush Life. Oh, that's an easy one. That's really Strayhorn, and there's a beautiful version with the him singing.
Excellent. It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing.
I think it's just Duke. It's Duke. Just Duke Ellington.
That's right.
Yay!
How about Fly Me to the Moon?
No, that's neither.
Excellent. That was actually by Bart Howard, whoever that is. It sounds like a made-up name. You know who Bart Howard is, or was?
A lot of them have made-up name, right?
Yeah.
Composers came from Europe, and they gave themselves an American name. Yeah, to be more to be easier to access their name or to sound more American in the jazz world. And anyway,
cool.
But no, I don't know that particular what's his real name.
All right, Lotus Blossom. Who wrote Lotus Blossom?
Lotus Blossom. I think it's Duke.
Try again.
Is it both? No.
Again,
My God.
This is an entirely unscientific quiz, so the answers that I got may not be the actual truth, but I had that listed as a Billy Strayhorn tune.
Oh, well, that's possible. Yeah.
Yeah. How about Chelsea Bridge?
Chelsea Bridge. Good question. I kind of don't know, actually.
I think that one is also Billy Strayhorn. That's what I'm going with there. Okay, Take the A Train. Who wrote that?
That's Billy Strayhorn.
Billy Strayhorn. And a little bit of collaboration from Duke Ellington, but I'm going to give that...
but it's really Billy Strayhorn.
Yeah. And a lot of those tunes are really Billy Strayhorn. They had kind of a John Lennon, Paul McCartney songwriting credit going on there with all of some of those songs. Yeah. How about Mood Indigo?
That's just Duke.
That is just the Duke. Very good. How about The River? That's not a song, actually.
Come on, we played it with the symphony. That's Duke Ellington.
Yeah.
Good piece.
I've only got two left, okay? How about Satin Doll?
Satin Doll. That's a good question. I know there's him, but
just
Duke
go
Ellington.
Duke Ellington, and okay, it was credited to Duke Ellington. It's kind of a trick question because it was credited as the song having been written by Duke Ellington, but actually Billy Strayhorn contributed to it as well. So either answer, either Ellington or both would be right. So you definitely get that one. And the last one here.
Considerate of you.
The last one on my list is Grand Lewis.
Whoa, Grand Lewis. That sounds like a tune I wrote at some point.
That is a tune you wrote. So the answer is neither. Was that Louis Armstrong that precipitated the title, or was it a different Louis? Or was it Louis?
No, it was my great-grandfather.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to hear the story about that.
It's a French title, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that was your great-grandfather, Louis the 16th, right?
Yeah, well, no. Oh, boy, no.
Yeah, we open up a whole can of worms there. Now, you have won the quiz, so congratulations to you.
I'll make sure to call Merwin after this.
Yeah, make sure and call Merwin. Rub it in a little bit that you were able to win the quiz. You had almost all the answers right, except for a couple of them, which were kind of questionable on my part, but definitely had a little...
I have to tell you, Brad, it's a lot of pressure to do the quiz alone.
Yeah, I know. Well, this weekend I'm going to be at the Metropolitan Opera doing their quiz, and that is nerve-wracking, let me tell you.
Well, that's a lot of pressure.
Yes, indeed.
Is it during the Wagner opera, or is it...
Yeah, it's during Lohengrin, the Wagner opera.
Oh, nice. I've seen some parts of rehearsals, and they're sounding amazing.
Yeah, hopefully I will get to see it on Saturday as well, so...
I'm very, very proud also because it's two Quebecers, like the director and the conductor.
Wow, yeah. And of course, the conductor you've worked with quite a bit, Yannick Nézet-Séguin. And I play your recording with him occasionally. With him.
Right.
He was the pianist, you remember?
Yeah, of course. You know what? It's important to keep a connection to an instrument. Even when you conduct a lot, sometimes it takes, like, I was half joking when I was saying, 10:30, 11 at night, you just pick it up, you play a little bit, and it takes a lot of dedication. But, sometimes when you see conductors who haven't played their instrument for a very long time, they start asking things that are almost music theory, instead of something that's also practical. But I'm not saying practical because you don't have any, any vision of the concept. It's not that. It's just, you need to ask for things that are doable, still moving into your vision of the piece, or what you think the composer's vision of the piece is. But it's a big difference when you don't play at all.
Yeah. Well, how does it affect your jazz chops? Because I assume that it's a little different than playing classical music, like the difference between as a trombonist. Go ahead.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah. So I think because I was first a jazz player, it's easier a little bit to play jazz. And jazz is the strength of the message. It doesn't have to, you don't have to play every note as written, and because you when you play a solo, you make it up yourself, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you really need to pay your dues regularly. So sometimes I have to say I put a good old Abra solo recording, which is kind of a -1 recording, so you have the band without the lead part, and I'm just practicing at my apartment in Toledo or in the basement here in Montreal, and I just play for an hour, a bunch of standards, and it gets me, it keeps me in shape because you have to keep your mind sharp as well as your chops.
Yeah, that's so interesting. Now, a lot of folks, of course, are familiar with Duke Ellington. Maybe not as much with Billy Strayhorn, even though he was like such an important part of Ellington's musical life for many years. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about Billy Strayhorn and where he fits into the whole Duke Ellington universe, as it were.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's like there's also the people work in tandem very often. There's a person that's more, in front of the stage who like Duke Ellington was a better organizer, right? He was it's difficult to run a big band. It's difficult to run an orchestra. Is that you need to have a certain kind of qualities, which didn't give him as much time as he wanted to just go and write some music there. But you also need to meet the right the right people, because it's like they shared the same mind a little bit, which is very interesting, right? And but when you're a teenager and you write a piece like Lush Life, because you have to think about it. When Billy Strayhorn he wasn't even 18 when he wrote Lush Life, which is probably the standard that we practice the most, because it's, first of all, the hardest one to play because of the tonality, the change of chords, the colors in it. But I think Strayhorn was very influenced before meeting Duke Ellington, like people like our fellow Toledo artist, Art Tatum, which we'll talk about later in the year.
Yeah.
But it was, when he met, well, not necessarily met, but when he was introduced to their music of Art Tatum, and eventually of Duke Ellington, it really made a big, big impression on him. It guides him to the kind of jazz he wants to write. But I think the first time he saw Duke Ellington, he was still quite young, but I think he really wanted to, I think he heard him like 5 years before he started working with him. So he just, he didn't want to be a band leader, Strayhorn. He really wanted to be part of working like a composer. And when they finally met, I think they clicked right away. Like, Duke Ellington used to say that Strayhorn was, yes, his right arm, his left arm, his eyes and the back of his head, his brain waves are the same as his brain waves. So basically it's like, it's the perfect complement to him, because Duke Ellington wrote a lot of extraordinary music. But, as time goes by, and you need to be, to work more with the band and to have more activities and make the band, how could I say, a full-time thing for all the players. Well, it's important to have somebody that you can absolutely feel that you can give your complete trust, and like you finish each other's sentences, kind of thing.
Well, it sounds like a great partnership. Did you know that Billy Strayhorn was actually born in Ohio? But
yeah, he's from Dayton.
Yeah, he was born in Dayton, Ohio, so kind of a homecoming for his music, at least. You talk about their meeting. for the first time, and it's a great story about that song "Take the A Train," which was inspired by that meeting.
Yeah, because there's the train you take in Ireland, right? If you want to get anywhere, really.
Yeah.
So what's really interesting is that they're complementary musically, but with their character as well, right? So it's because Strayhorn was, very not shy, but how do you say in English, like mild mannered? Is that it?
Yeah.
And a bit smaller. It looked like it was easier for him to flourish if he was just a composer and arranger, So it's I think it was a really good partnership. And what's interesting also is that Duke Ellington was a fantastic composer, so it would have been not as good a relationship if Strayhorn was the guy writing all the tunes, having all the inspiration. The other one was collecting the applause and the laurels, and that would be different. That wouldn't be good. But since they were both really great musicians, I think it worked out just fine. But I have a story about when Strayhorn passed away. I don't know if you remember when we had as a guest we had Gene Denovi, who came to play with us with the symphony.
Yeah, right. That was a while back.
It wasn't my first season. It was 5 years ago. And Gene was, of course, knew also Duke Ellington. And when Strayhorn passed away, Duke Ellington offered him to continue his legacy.
Wow. So
that was like, for me, it's, like jazz is always, it's kind of an oral tradition. Now it's great. That organization, such as Jazz at Lincoln Center, they have transcriptions that you can actually read them and you can share them with younger generations. But a big thing is, no degrees of separation. Somebody who knew somebody who played. Like when playing a lot with Gene, got me closer to the universe of Duke Ellington. I've been playing the music of Duke Ellington very, very differently since I played with Gene, which it's not Billy Strayhorn, but it would have been the person who would have continued in that style, after that.
That's a great connection.
So great. Yeah. The big difference would say is that, as mostly is you get a little bit older or you get a little bit more mature, you play closer to the tune. You play closer to the song. You start playing maybe a little less known notes all around. And each note has a particular inflection. That's one thing you see a lot. Like Johnny Hodge, for example, the lead alto of the Duke Ellington Jazz Orchestra. Well, a lot of pieces were written especially for him, a lot of solos. And he had his particular way of playing. So we're going to try to bring that to the forefront, even with our players.
Yeah. Well, the concert is a week from tomorrow. It's Thursday, March 23rd, 8 o'clock p.m. at the Valentine Theater. The Toledo Jazz Orchestra, Alain Trudel, the headliner of the program. Alain, it's interesting to watch you working with the Toledo Symphony and getting a feeling, and maybe I'm making this up, but you can tell me, that you bring your jazz chops a little bit to the podium in the way that you work with instruments and the way that you identify with, especially with instruments who have a solo, who have the spotlight on them. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about how jazz affects your classical career, as a conductor.
That's a very good question. Honestly, I don't know. If I have to think about it, I would say there's a certain freedom that I like our principals to have when they have solos. But the thing is that, and it's the same thing in jazz really also, is that you have to be you have to acknowledge and just be aware, but acknowledge and embrace the tradition of whatever you're playing. If you're playing Beethoven, it's a certain way. If you're playing Tchaikovsky a certain way, Mahler's a certain way. So as long as the players are within that frame, it's not so restrictive. It's just as long as you understand the style, which they do very well, of course, because they have so much experience. Then then I like them to have a little bit of freedom, like to bring something, not necessarily just they don't change it to put their own name on it, but their own sensitivity, their own understanding of the composer. I think that's the best way to put it. I like them to show us their understanding of that particular composer and to share that with us instead of always doing what the conductor asks of them.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a little bit influenced by that. Maybe not. I don't know. It's just respecting the individual when they have something to do. Of course, it has to be within the style that we're playing. But maybe there's a little bit of that. I don't know other than that. But that's a really great question. I'm gonna be thinking about that in the next concert.
Well, everything that you just said could apply equally to working with the jazz orchestra as well as the symphony. I mean, it's all about music, as Duke Ellington said, there are two kinds of music, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's I live by that. But I changed it a little bit because he said there's good music and bad music. I say, for me, there's music I appreciate, music I don't appreciate. That's very personal. And I try not to do the one I don't appreciate. And if I know that there's something I don't appreciate but others appreciate, then there's always guests for that.
Yeah, you're so nice.
No, but it's true. I mean, I have to be honest. I mean, it's intellectual honesty, that integrity is that, there's some kind of music that's not really my cup of tea. I mean, of course, if somebody would be, it's pretty broad, my taste. It's very eclectic, but it's like a lot of things. You cannot be music director if you only like two composers, right?
Yeah.
But you need to have a genuine love for many different styles. But there are a few things that really not my forte or my thing. And then, but I don't want to be our public not to be able to for us to share that music with them. So sometimes we have a guest. It's not only for that, but for example, the last program we had, not the last program, but one of the last programs we had with Joan Valletta is a program I love every single piece of the program. But you have to. It's nice to have somebody else come and share their vision of that. And same with the jazz orchestra.
But we're not going to see the Toledo Country and Western Band anytime soon, right?
You know what? You've hit on one style I do like. I love country music. For example, I think Dolly Parton is a fantastic composer.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people don't know this, but don't know this fact. But that what is it? That Whitney Houston tune, "I Will Always Love You."
Yeah,
that's a Dolly Parton tune. And of course Jolene. And I mean, those are what I like about country music. I know it's very far from what we're talking about. Is I don't like all country music, like you were saying with Duke Ellington. It doesn't mean you embrace everything. You embrace the part that you like. But what I like is the sincerity, and that it's as sincere as Shostakovich.
It's interesting the way that music has those common elements between genres that make it appealing to you. What would you say to a prospective audience member who attends those Toledo Symphony Orchestra concerts and they hesitate to go to the jazz orchestra because it's not their thing, as it were? How would you sort of entice them to be interested in those offerings in the jazz orchestra?
Well, first thing I would say is buy your ticket early, because from what I've seen, they go like hotcakes. But you know what? And the same is true from people who just go to the jazz concert, don't come to the classical concert. People don't really, how do you say, there's not a migration so much from one to the other. But I mean, is try to go past the style itself, but the essence of it. Like, do you feel the sincerity behind the music? Do you feel that there's a story being told there? But at the same time, all tastes are, in nature. So, but why not try? Why not go once, and see if you like it? I mean, that's probably what I would say. And, it's there, especially something like Duke Ellington, because the concepts are very interesting. He wrote I put some Duke Ellington in our symphony concerts. As you know, you were talking about The River. The River is a fantastic symphonic poem that I put on the Canadian brass concert we had, and people loved it. It's just often we have a preconceived idea that either we're not knowledgeable enough, or it's just not something that we're used to, or maybe it's not for me, or that kind of thing. I mean, you'll never know if you don't try. That's for sure.
That's true. Someday I want to have an in-depth conversation with you about the different kinds of jazz, because you seem a little more old school, which I am definitely, and this particular program certainly fits that mold of, like, classic jazz hits. Can you talk about some of the stuff that we're going to hear on the program?
Oh, yes. We're going to hear a lot of things on the program. I really wanted everybody to have a wide representation of their music. So we talked about Lush Life already. I'm going to give you the well-known ones and the ones that are not as well-known. So while Cottontail is a traditional rhythm change, which is a form of... it's like, you have the blues, rhythm changes like a blues, but with a bridge in the middle. And that's an excuse for all of us to improvise. Coco, which is a fabulous tune that represents a little bit more African, kind of in the Congolish music. Don't Mean a Thing, of course, everybody loves it. Caravan, Moon Indigo. So those are, Take the A Train, of course. So those are all tunes that people know and love. But we're also going to explore a little bit of the black and tan fantasy, diminuendo and crescendo in blue, which is not played very often. Main Stem, All Things Ain't What They Used to Be. That's another tune we'll play. That's kind of a little bit more well-known. And there's a bunch of other tunes, but we have about, I'd say, 15, 20 tunes we play in the concert, because I also want to keep it not pieces that will last for 15 minutes each. We're keeping them fairly short, to the point, and a few combo, and maybe I'll play a few tunes with the rhythm section as well, and maybe some of our saxophone and trumpet will join me on those. So I think we're going to have a good evening. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Crescendo in Blue. I don't know that piece. I know the black and tan piece, but...
I know. It's interesting, huh?
Yeah, it sounds kind of like Gershwin meets Maurice Ravel, kind of.
There's also the Jeeps Blues.
Yeah.
I might not know.
I look forward to that, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
This concert is a week from tomorrow. It's March 23rd, Thursday, 8 o'clock p.m. at the Valentine Theater, the Toledo Jazz Orchestra with Alain Trudel. Well, I want to thank you, Alain. We're about out of time for the conversation today, but we're looking forward to this concert a week from tomorrow, the Toledo Jazz Orchestra, with my guest today on Toledo Symphony Lab, Alain Trudel, who is the music director of the TSO, also the artistic director of the TJO. Thank you, Alain, for calling in today.
My pleasure.
This program is a production of WGTE Public Media in collaboration with our sponsor, the Toledo Symphony, with generous support from the Rita Barber Kern Foundation. You can download episodes as a podcast by going to our website at wgte.org/lab. You can also subscribe to us through your podcast app of choice, including Apple, Google, and Spotify podcasts. And don't forget to check out all the upcoming events at the Symphony by visiting their website at toledosymphony.com and their various social media outlets on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can find the TSO streaming platform online at stream.artstoledo.com. My thanks again to the Toledo Symphony's Alain Trudel. I'm Brad Cresswell. You've been listening to Toledo Symphony Lab from FM 91.